It's no secret that the Detroit Pistons had a very challenging 2023-2024 NBA season, and when we see a team have a year like that, we know major changes are coming in the offseason, and that's exactly what we saw from the Detroit Pistons during the 2024 NBA offseason, and we saw them started off with making major changes to the team from leadership standpoints. We saw them fire coach Monty Williams, and they also fired Troy Weaver. And to replace these guys, I love the replacements because the two guys that they brought in, they have plenty of experience with rebuilding organizations. We look at the new captain of this team from the head coaching standpoint, Coach JB Bickerstaff, who previously coached for the Cleveland Cavaliers, and when he arrived on the scene there, they were a rebuilding organization. He was able to help them get back into playoff contention. They won playoff series under Coach JB Bickerstaff. We see where the Cleveland Cavaliers are right now. Coach JB Bickerstaff, he was the kickstarter for that. And then we look at Trajan Langdon, where he was at previously. He was with the New Orleans Pelicans as their general manager, and he did a great job in their rebuilding process, drafting guys like Herb Jones, drafting guys like Trey Murphy, two talented young players in the NBA, and just helping guys develop over there. And a lot of people don't understand how good the New Orleans Pelicans rebuild was. When we look at the roster that they have on paper, they have a very beautiful team on paper, but with them, they just have a nasty injury curse. They haven't been able to stay healthy over a long, extended period of time, and it hasn't led to as many playoff appearances as they would like, or playoff success as they would like. But nonetheless, Trajan Langdon played a huge hand in rebuilding that team over there. So here we are with the Detroit Pistons. Trajan Langdon, he's now the president of basketball operations, and when asked about what was his plan for the Detroit Pistons this year, and I'm paraphrasing here, he said that he wanted to keep this young group of young players, evaluate these guys, and continue to develop these guys, because he said that he sees a lot of talent within these young guys. And that's exactly what we seen. We didn't see no major changes to the Detroit Pistons. Their young core group of guys. Cade Cunningham is still a part of this team. Jaden Ivey is still a part of this team. Asar Thompson, Jalen Duren, Marcus Sasser, all of these guys are still a part of this team. And another thing that Trajan Langdon stressed over this offseason is that he was going to add perimeter shooting to this team. And this is so important because this is something that we really haven't seen during the Cade Cunningham era since he's been drafted during the Detroit Pistons. And I can't lie to Detroit, that they have made attempts to go out and try to put a shooter alongside him. Bojan Bogdanovic, he was on the Detroit Pistons, but never was consistently out there. And whenever Bojan Bogdanovic did get out there for the Detroit Pistons, kind of felt like the season was already doomed. And then the same thing with Jeremy Grant. And I know Jeremy Grant, he's not like a knockdown sniper three-point shooter, but he is a floor spacer. But he was never really the healthiest for the Detroit Pistons as well. So we saw Trajan Langdon, he went out, he made some additions to the team. No additions that most people are going to look out and is going to catch their eyes, because these are smaller name NBA players. But these additions that were made to the Detroit Pistons, I think they're making the biggest difference in the world. And we look at some of those guys that were brought in to be floor spacers for the Detroit Pistons. We look at Malik Beasley, who was brought in via free agency. We look at Tim Hardaway Jr., who was brought in this offseason via trade. And then also Tobias Harris, the biggest name of the three, was brought in via free agency on a 2-year deal. So I think Trajan Langdon, with him making these moves, it has definitely benefited the Detroit Pistons. And we talked about what were the expectations for the Pistons this year. I think they're definitely meeting them so far. I've enjoyed watching the Detroit Pistons. They're being fairly competitive right now. They're 10th place in the Eastern Conference with a record of 11-16. And when we were making videos on the Detroit Pistons over the summer and we were just conversing in the comments, I think a lot of us came to a mutual agreement that the play-in tournament was fair expectations for the Detroit Pistons, because once again, we didn't see them make no splashy off-season moves. We didn't see them bring in no superstar caliber players, but we did see them bring in them pieces to help further develop the young talent on this team. And that's exactly what we've seen so far this season. And they've also been lucky enough to be competitive in the process. So we've seen guys get better individually, and we also seen the Detroit Pistons, they're getting a lot better as a team, especially when we compare it to the season that they had last year. But the new additions on the team, I think they've easily been the most beneficial to the best player on the team, and that's Cade Cunningham. But when you have floor spacers, around Cade Cunningham, we see how much of a difference that it makes. It makes him look like one of the best players in the NBA. And now I don't feel so crazy for seeing over these last couple of years. There's not many young guys that I would take in the NBA over Cade Cunningham, and it's not a biased thing. It's not just because he has on a Detroit Pistons uniform, but I honestly think Cade Cunningham is that good, and I think we're finally starting to see it this season, or I should say more people are starting to see it this season, and a huge reason is because of the floor spacing that they have around him. And we look at the Detroit Pistons as a team, 3-point shooting, they're 15th in the league in 3-pointers made per game, and they're also 15th in the league in 3-point percentage. So they're right in the middle of the pack, but this is a huge upgrade from where they've been the last couple of years, which is toward the bottom of the NBA. And what Cade Cunningham has been able to do with this floor spacing is show how elite of a playmaker that he is, and he's elite in every facet when it comes to playmaking. I've seen him pick apart defenses, doing it in the two-man game with the pick and roll, whether it's finding the big on the roll, whether it's finding shooters spotting up, whether it's getting rid of the ball quickly and finding cutters. I've seen him pick defenses apart in that manner, and we saw all of this on display against the Miami Heat in their most recent win, where he dropped his 6th triple-double of the season, getting 18 assists, and he put on a playmaking clinic. But we also see him pick teams apart when he's in the low post. He's a really good post player. By the way, a really good playmaker. In that aspect, he's a good playmaker when he's isolating in transition. He's a fantastic playmaker, and this is another thing that we've been saying, that Cade Cunningham, he has the potential to be one of those rare players like Luka, like LeBron James, like Chris Paul, that just has a firm grasp on the game when it comes to that scoring and playmaking standpoint, and everything can go how they want it to go when it comes into the speed and the pace of the game. So Cade Cunningham, I think he's really benefited from these guys. What we're seeing with our eyes, we can see it. And then also the numbers. The numbers are insane. He's averaging almost a triple-double, 24 points per game, 9 assists to go along with 7 rebounds. And he's also been very, very efficient. He's shooting 45% from the field, and he's also shooting 38% from the three-point line. So without a doubt in my mind, I think Cade Cunningham should definitely get that all-star game nod. And I think it's time for him to start getting a little bit more respect when it comes to these little lists that people love to make. Like, he was ranked 13th. He was ranked 13th in the NBA when it comes to players under the age of 25, which I think is so crazy. If I'm being honest, and this is all bias out the window, there's not many players that I would take over. I don't know if there's 12. If we take in the whole player pool and throw the age out the window, I don't know if there's 12 players that I would take over Cade Cunningham. When you just factor circumstances, I don't think there's many players that can do what he's doing in the situation that he's in right now. But nonetheless, it's been a spectacular year for Cade Cunningham, and I think most of us expected this from him. And we got to give a huge shout out to the guys that they brought in. Malik Beasley, he's having a lights out season from downtown. He's shooting 41% from the field. He just had a big time game against the Miami Heat. No Jaden Ivey last night, and no Tobias Harris. And he goes out and dropped 28 points against a defensive oriented team in the Miami Heat. Same thing to Tim Hardaway Jr. He was big time against the Miami Heat, 3 threes in overtime. And wins like this is so important from the Detroit Pistons. We look at how this season has gone so far. There's been so many games that I shouldn't say so many, but there's been a handful of games that the Detroit Pistons, where they've been in control of, where they just let the lead slip away. And we saw that almost happen again last night. The Detroit Pistons, they were in full cruise control for majority of this game, and then towards the fourth quarter, it almost almost collapsed. And they have actually 2 quality wins like this season against the Miami Heat. This time it was Jimmy Butler acting a fool on us. Last time it was Tyler Hero. So it's really good to see the Detroit Pistons, because usually when individual players have monstrous games like this against the Pistons, they haven't been able to withstand it. So when the Pistons have Jimmy Butler getting 35 points and 15 plus rebounds, and I think he had maybe 9 assists, maybe 10 plus assists, when they have opposing superstars getting games like that and they're still able to pull out a win, definitely seeing a bunch of progress from the Detroit Pistons. And the floor spacing is definitely helping Jaden Ivey as well. He's averaging a career high in points. He's also averaging a career high in field goal percentage and 3-point percentage. So this season has been big time for him. He's a building block, a cornerstone of this organization, and I'm still a big believer in him as well. That type of athleticism, I think once he learns to hone it, be a little bit more efficiently, those shooting splits, 43% from the field, we want that to come up to maybe just 45%, and then he's actually shooting it pretty decently from three-point land. From three-point land, he's shooting 36%. So I think with a player like him, with all that he offers to the game of basketball, his athleticism, his ability to finish around the rim, if you can get Jaden Ivey knocking down 36% of his threes, I think we can all be satisfied with that. But the Detroit Pistons, man, life has been so crazy lately. I haven't been able to get to a game just yet, but I do watch the Pistons, and if I do miss a game, I'm definitely watching the highlights, and these guys have been entertaining all season long. But Cade Cunningham, he is truly that dude, and I can't wait to see what the Detroit Pistons, Trajan Langdon, I can't wait to see what they do with this organization over the next couple of years, because if we get the right group, we continue to develop and get guys together, and then continuing to add the right pieces, the Detroit Pistons could be one of the best young teams in all of the NBA. But that's what I want to talk about with you guys today. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, comment down below. How do you feel about the Detroit Pistons currently? And then subscribe for more weekly content. We do this all the time, man. And that's curtains.